Hello everyone, I'm Broken Mojo, Mojo for short, and it is bitching hour on this channel today. Or bitching segment, or whatever. It's just a short little video today. A Mojo bite. Some topical content, I heard that's pretty good. As I assume everyone is aware, Pokemon Sword and Shield released last weekend, maybe last Friday, I don't know. And much like any mainline Pokemon game release, there's been a lot of fanfare and excitement and people shitting their pants. But this time there's also been a lot of anger and criticism directed towards this particular release. It's become the big Twitter talking point. It's big controversy. And people are just sort of shit in the bed over it. And for me, I have not really delved into much of the hashtags and the angry threads on 4chan and all the articles defending it or attacking it or whatever. But what little I have seen has become a source of frustration to me. So I figured I would throw my hat into the opinion arena like, a million other sort of internet personalities have done. And, you can hear the 50th opinion on this stupid fucking game. And to that end, I decided, obviously I'm going to need a bit of background noise. So I decided to go ahead and just do a little drawing of one of the Pokemon from the game. Obviously one of the new ones. So I chose Obstagoon. I quite like the aesthetic of this Pokemon. It's really cool, This is a Galar version of Zigzagoon and Loon, and there were Galar versions of those, and they sort of had a punk rock aesthetic to them. And in this one, they gave some of the Galar forms, region variants, whatever, they gave them like additional evolutions that the original sort of forms from their respective regions or whatever don't have. And this is the third evolution resulting from Loon. And I think it's, pretty cool. I totally just don't like the Pokemon because it's vaguely anthropomorphic. I'm not some kind of degenerate who draws Pokemon in lewd poses for the internet. I would never do that. You should never suspect me of doing that, and you should never ever search for that either. But ignoring all that, let's get into it. And to begin, I'm sort of going to do the little disclaimer moment that internet personalities who sort of like to rip into things say at the beginning of their videos, where they rip into the things. And that is, it's standard stock. I don't care if you really, really like this game. You should, just like the game. If you really enjoy playing this game, if you enjoy playing these Pokemon games, just keep doing it. You don't have to take my opinion as a personal attack on you or anything. Just enjoy what you enjoy and fuck everyone else who says different. But anyway, that gives me license to shit all over the Pokemon series, which I'm going to do. So, I guess to begin, this criticism and resentment towards Sword and Shield obviously began when Game Freak announced that they were cutting half the national dex from the game. And in previous games, there was a limited amount of Pokemon you could catch in the game. In the beginning, you'd go through all the areas and there'd be Pokemon to get. And then in the post game, after you beat the Elite Four and the champion of whatever version game that is on, typically more Pokemon would show up. Typically Pokemon from like the older generations. You can go out and catch those or whatnot. And to get Pokemon that weren't specifically in that game, you'd have to trade them over, which you could do from other games and, Pokemon from old saves and whatever. And they'd always have these sort of really stupid, complicated ways to do it. Like for the DS, you'd stick the GBA cartridge in it with the DS game. You wanted to transfer the GBA Pokemon to the DS game, and you'd go into a park or whatever, and you can never trade back down because trading up, they always alter and sort of patch things, so you basically can't go back to can't take a particular Pokemon from a particular version. Like, and by version, I mean like 2.03 or something like that, and you can't roll it back to 1.8. You can't do that. But in this game, in Sword and Shield, when they cut the national dex, that means they cut the Pokemon from ever even being in the game. So a lot of people lost a lot of their favorite Pokemon to sort of Game Freak's arbitrary decisions. You know, a big example of that was out of the original Kanto starters, which is, you know, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander. Bulbasaur, and obviously all the later evolutions of that, Bulbasaur and Squirtle got cut, but they left Charmander in, which means you can get a Charizard in that game, because everyone faps to Charizard. And the actual, like, final leader, or what's the name, the champion, uses a big-ass fucking Charizard that he can use the new gimmick in this game, which is Gigantamaxing, Dynamaxing, or whatever, and get a giant, flaming, epic Charizard, which is... It's a beautiful fuck you to all the people who are fucking hate Charizard. And I appreciate that. You know, I appreciate that as a sort of a troll move. It's not a nice move, but it's funny. But there's that, and then people have started using the sort of culling of the national dex as that was like a kickoff for open season on this game. So all these like little new problems that the game's introduced, like they've made it so you can't catch Pokemon that are above your badge level. So if you have like the third badge you get in the game that lets you catch level 35 Pokemon, and you see a level 36 Pokemon out in the wild, you can't catch it. You cannot catch it, that's sort of like a movement over from the previous games where you could catch any level Pokemon you could if you just wore it down and threw the right Pokeball at it or whatever. It's just that if it was too high level, it maybe wouldn't listen to you. But in this game, you just cannot catch it at all, which is such a strange change to me. I don't know why they did that. And there's also like this change to, like, I think some particular sound settings are locked behind an NPC you have to talk to, which is okay. That's such a Japanese, not Nintendo game design thing. Just infuriating. But a lot of these little things I think people would just have ignored. They would complain about, but just, you know, shrugged about. But the National Pokédex thing, cutting out so many people's favorite Pokemon, that's sort of become the hill to die on. And people are just going after the game now because of that. And then there's all these other problems that have sort of existed in the series for a very long time that people are complaining about, like how sort of childish the story is and how sort of easy the games are. And those have always been complaints about the games, but again, those complaints were always on a scale that was very minor. There was a very small portion relative to the larger community that actually complained about those. But with this, it seems like everyone has sort of developed like epic gaming taste, I guess. And now it feel completely justified in wagging their finger at the game and saying, "Oh, Pokemon, you're doing all these things wrong." Or they're wagging their finger at Game Freak saying, "Oh, Game Freak, you're a shit studio and you can't develop shit." And it's just like, I don't think y'all would be as angry if they didn't do the National Dex thing. And because they did that, you're just sort of picking at different things. You're picking at whatever you can in the game to sort of just complain about it. And I think that sort of, for me, it sort of highlights this notion that all the Pokemon games up to this point have had a standard of excellence to them, which is untrue. I think of, relative to sort of the popularity of Nintendo's franchises, Pokemon is probably one of the most major underlying gameplay problems out of any of them relative to like its size. Pokemon, I think, it's either the largest or the second largest. It has to be. Just the entire franchise itself. But its gameplay has effectively not changed since the early Red and Blue days. It has not changed at all. In Red and Blue, Red and Blue had this thing where like it was amazing that there was 150 Pokemon in this sort of world to explore as you like individually leveled up all your Pokemon, and they all learned all these different moves and things like that, and you had to figure out this type chart. And that was interesting. That was like something you could really dig into as a kid, learning all these things and stuff like that. But then the second generation, it was the same thing. And then the third generation, the fourth, and it's just always like, here's new Pokemon. And at this point, everyone sort of knows the deal. All the fans who have been here since the like first, second, third gen, fourth gen is sort of like where people at that point, they were so young. I don't know. Maybe it's the same sort of thing where they too sort of feel the sting of it, but I don't know. But Pokemon's just a really average series. It's very average, and I think a lot of the love for it is just nostalgia driven. People played it when they were kids in the 90s, in the early 2000s, and it was something everyone grew up with. But no one ever thinks about how sort of simple the game is. How the solution to everything is just to have a Pokemon. To have like 3 Pokemon, dump all the experience you get onto them, and then just like load them up with attacks and just sweep everything. If your Pokemon is 10 levels higher than anything else, and you have a basic understanding of typing, and you don't sort of group everything into one type, you can sweep anything and you don't really have a problem. If you sort of focus on one type, particular sections of the game will give you a problem, but you can just sort of go out and maybe catch another Pokemon, level it up a bit, and like if you have a grass team and you approach the fire gym, just go get a water Pokemon. It can be like 2 levels lower than everything else, and you just sort of sweep the water gym. Or the fire gym, like Bubble Beam, Bubble Beam, Bubble Beam, everything dies in one hit. And that's sort of the core of the game. It's not rocket science. It's not anything that's been improved on, really. Just that core one-on-one RPG system of you attack, I attack, you attack. And they've just, since then, their innovation methods have been just to stick things onto it. Like, we've separated the move types now into like physical and special. Or maybe that was maybe they separated the defenses. I don't know. But then they added like abilities to all the Pokemon, then natures and characteristics. And then I don't know when they did like IVs and EV stuff. So that could have been there from the beginning, but they sort of slipped. That was sort of like hidden gameplay features that maybe I think was just to make your Pokemon all around stronger than similar leveled Pokemon. They sort of brought that to the forefront in the later series by introducing like super training and those little stupid mini games, and where you could like manually increase your Pokemon's EVs, effort values, by just playing those and giving them the punching bags or whatever. My voice has gone out. It's so sad on like a 20-minute video. But Game Freak just hasn't innovated on this core sort of gameplay loop, which is it's so weird. And I mean, there is a beauty to the simplicity, I think. Just sort of being brain dead and going, okay, whatever, I attack. I like these Pokemon. Hey, look, that's cool. That Pokemon's cool. Sweep this gym. It just feels good. And I agree that every RPG, turn-based RPG, doesn't need to be like Darkest Dungeon in terms of complexity. It doesn't need to be that. There can exist room for simple games. But I think at this point, where such a large amount of the fan base are people in their 20s, it's getting to the point where you sort of can't ignore the fact that the series is for children. And I don't like to use that as like a serious argument that I'm going to say this is the problem with the series. It's for babies, and all the man children playing it need to stop and grow up and stop being incels or whatever. That's that's something I ignore. Video games, movies, anything can be for anybody. And, it's just a person's personality and sort of how they insert themselves in these sort of interests they have. That's more of the problem. If someone spends all their day watching My Little Pony, it's not really My Little Pony's fault. It's the person, the individually 40-year-old male there who has the problem. It's not the series. But I think out of all of Nintendo's series, Pokemon is the one that sort of refused to evolve over the years, which is very, very, very humorous and ironic. I could probably highlight that better, but I refuse to right now. But if you look at games like Mario's entire premise is so gamey that it's like, okay, well, what's my incentive for jumping all over these like weird things and doing all this platforming? Well, Bowser stole the princess, and that's it. You don't really need any more. In Legend of Zelda, it's very sort of simple, like hero values and things like that. But I don't know. As a 20-year-old, I just listening to 10-year-olds, and they're like all canonically 10-year-olds, I think, talk about believing in themselves and trying hard and spending all this effort training your Pokemon. It's just like I don't think the series really needs that anymore. It feels such like a young children's shonen anime thing. I don't know. It's something that really grates on most people, I think. I think most people just smash A and don't read any of the dialogue, don't even pay attention to any of these cutscenes and plot they're sort of shoving into the story. But if you look at it from a gameplay perspective, I don't know, it feels like to me that sort of a lot of the original systems relied on memorization of like the type system to sort of like get good. You just would match up the types and that was it. If you threw a water type out against a fire type, you were smart. You were the smart Pokemon player. But I think maybe Nintendo underestimated the basic thinking ability of most people, and they continue to today, or Game Freak underestimates it. I need to start saying Game Freak more because I don't know. Like, Nintendo probably has a lot to say, but I don't think Nintendo is really developing it. They sort of have their own sort of internal development groups. I don't know. I haven't researched this shit. I'm just blowing opinions out my ass, and you're standing in the way. Hopefully you don't move. But the system itself it sort of ends on the typing system, and that's it. And if the typing system fails, you just grind your Pokemon against wild Pokemon. I remember my cousin being very, very young, and he was showing me his Pokemon game, and he was stuck in, this was like Fire Red or Leaf Green, I think it was Leaf Green, and he was stuck in Mount Moon. He hadn't progressed past that, but he had a Venusaur that was level 40. And so he just had done that, and just, I don't know. Maybe that's more of him being incredibly stupid because I'm trying to say how easy the games are for children. It's just, the game ends after the typing system. I don't know what else to say about that. And all these tacked on things, like special damage and abilities and natures and characteristics and individual values and effort values, they've been tacked on without actually solving the issue itself, which is you have 6 Pokemon and it's all turn-based one-on-one moves. I'm looking at it like that's 95% of the game. It's just one-on-one battles. And there are 2-on-2 and 3-on-3. And I think rotation battles and 3-on-3 battles are the same thing. I'm not quite sure. But it feels like such a better sort of direction to head in with the series. Like, I remember I think Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, weren't all of those mandatory 2-on-2 battles. I'm not quite sure. You should totally respond in the comments and whether I'm right or wrong, or just go in there and say I'm an idiot or a pervert or whatever. I'm fine with you doing anything. Commenting on the video sort of boosts its visibility anyway on YouTube. So I'm fine with no matter what you do. Spitting bullshit helps me. Looking at the game itself, I don't know. I think a lot of people just don't care. I think the greater majority of the Pokemon fan base does not give a shit about these sort of gameplay issues, and they play it for what it is. People play Pokemon games because they are Pokemon games. They want to play a Pokemon game, and they don't care if it's simple or stupid or whatever. They just want to play a Pokemon game. And there's things you can do to like sort of increase the difficulty. Like you can do Nuzlocks, challenge runs. You can make a team of all, particularly one Pokemon. You can see here I'm done. I think this is the final version. I've probably gone in and edited a few things. I think it's pretty good for, I think, under 3 hours of work. I like it. But it's just a shame that there's sort of this existing problem to Pokemon, which is how sort of dull and stupid it is. And people are just complaining about them cutting the decks so much. And I don't even think it's so much about people cutting the decks as it was just people didn't like that, so they did they did the Twitter thing where they just threw their shit on the ground and said that they were going to sort of virtue signal how they wanted Game Freak to change and, you know, go back and do these things. And the big issue obviously was Game Freak had an awful PR move of saying something like they cut the national decks because they wanted to focus on making all new models because they were upgrading to a console. All new models and all new animations, and then gameplay leaked, and the models were almost exactly the same, and all the animations, like there was that animation of the rabbit thing just doing a little, like doing double kick, and all he did was they just moved his model up and down slightly, it was so immensely lazy that a Pokemon whose whole theme is that he plays soccer, his double tick, his animation for the move double kick is just him bouncing up and down. But things like that, like little pictures and little gifs like that, are very easily shareable and very easily rage baity. So I think out of the 10% of people who are bitching about the game being bad, there are probably maybe 25% of that 10% are actually pissed off and want to change it. And the rest of it are just people who are trying to get likes and retweets and things like that. They're just sort of digging into that realm. You know, this video is going to go on too long, but and I'll just wrap it up here. But in summation, the Pokemon series has a shit ton of gameplay problems, and people are bitching about things I find stupid. So this is a bit more rambly than I wanted it to be. You know, I hope you enjoyed the art thing. It's still scrolling around on screen because I've gone like 2 minutes over, but hope you like it. You know, subscribe, follow, whatever, you know, tell me I'm a fucking idiot. That's all good. So I'll see y'all later, guys.